Okay, so I'm going to be painting a swan in the Alla Prima technique using oil paints. And yeah, I'm going to finish it off in one go. It's about an hour and 10 minutes it took to paint this. I'm working on an 18 by 15 inch piece of oil primed Belgian linen. And colours today are titanium white, cadmium yellow pale, yellow ochre, quinacridone magenta, bright reds, cobalt turquoise, magnese blue, phthalo turquoise, ultramarine blue, and burnt sienna. So there's a few more colours that I'm usually kind of used to having on my palette. And I'm using a little bit of Liquin Original, just speeds up the drying time. And I have odorless mineral spirits underneath me, but I'm not going to be watering down or thinning down the paints too much. At the reference photo here. So this photo was taken by myself in Skiathos last week for my sister's wedding. Um, so we went to Skiathos last weekend and saw this beautiful little swan swim past us on the beach, and thought I'd take a photograph of it, and even better, I thought I'd paint it. So I'm starting up by mixing a few batch of colours. I started with my darkest dark in the top left hand side, which is just a combination of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and I think a bit of quinacridone magenta. And a similar mix now, just a little bit lighter. So believe it or not, swans aren't white. They're not exactly white. Saw a few colour sort of combinations in this photo. Blue sort of shadow colours, and other blue colours within the shadows, and kind of like a warm white. So I'm just mixing up an idea here. Ouch. Titanium white with cadmium yellow pale. And yeah, a little bit difficult. Struggle a little bit throughout. There's also kind of beige colours and not so beige colours within the swan. And yeah, struggled a little bit. Um, but in general, happy with how it came out. At one point, or 2 points, maybe 3 points, I wanted to ditch the painting. I didn't think it was going to go too well, but I persevered, got through it, and ended up being a very kind of tranquil, sweet, cool painting. Now, I've noticed a few of my paintings are a little bit warm in the last couple of weeks or few months, so I just thought about going for something cooler. Now, I'm mixing up these colours here for the swan, and I'm wiping my palette knife when my hand goes off the screen. Um, just to give me an idea of what I'm going to be kind of doing today, basically. So it does help mixing up the colours. Does take about 5-7 minutes or so, but these aren't exact colours that I'm going to be using. They're going to be modified throughout the actual painting, but it just gives me an idea of what I'm doing really, and it just saves a bit of time as well, and it keeps everything kind of clean. And I'm going to be using palette knife later on. And here I'm just kind of mixing up a few other kind of cool colours. And I'm making sure to use plenty of paint as well. And I'm going to start painting shortly, I guess. So this is a random kind of voiceover and a full tutorial of painting this little beautiful swan here. So as you can see, when I'm mixing up the paint colors, the paint piles, should I say, I'm wiping up my palette knife, and then I'm just getting a little bit of that Liquin Original in the mix. So here I've just picked up a bit of that cadmium yellow and burnt sienna and a little bit of that blue. And here's why I kind of struggle now. I'm trying to find this kind of grey colour, which I found in the neck of the swan. It's a little bit of a contrasted sort of image this swan was, because the sun was obviously on the other side, and it's very kind of bright blue sea, but contrasts quite nicely with the shadows that you can see, or that you will see in the painting of the swan. But yeah, difficult because of the warm and cool colours within the swan. I didn't want to mix them too much because I didn't want too much kind of neutral grey. Um, but yeah, not bad for about 1 hour and 20 minutes or so. But here I'm just mixing up some warmer variations now, and just clean the palette knife and added a bit of that liquid original. Now, liquid original is toxic, and I'm keeping my making sure that my home studio is well ventilated with fans, windows open, and a dehumidifier or humidifier, whatever they're called. Okay, so now I'm just going to be mixing up, I think the sea color here. So titanium white, bit of that manganese blue, I think that one is. Manganese blue is a cheaper alternative to cobalt blue. Absolutely love it. It's got more punch and vibrancy than um, ultramarine blue, but I tend to use a different kind of variation of blues, but just stick to one blue. I do usually use fewer colors, but I mean, because it's a blue kind of um, scene within the sea, I thought I'd go for a few different kind of sorts of blue, sort of variations of blue, just for some interest and some fun, really. Okay, so I'm going for a kind of dark blue here, and that's going to be for the horizon, and just picking up um, variations really. Now, I'm not going for every kind of detail that I see within the reference photo. Um, I did fall into that trap a little bit here, but at the end of the day, it's my picture, it's my painting, and I can kind of break the rules a little bit and kind of distort um, areas of where I think need to be distorted. I think that your value range is quite important. So that's how dark or light your subject is. I'm just going to put a bit more white on there. Tend to use a lot of white in my paintings. And yeah, using more paint than you need is quite important too. And I'm just mixing up a kind of greeny blue color now for the sea that's closest to us in the foreground. So as you can see, the color mixing is pretty quick. I've been rambling on now for about 5 minutes. Oh no, sorry, 8 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. Um, Here I'm just mixing up a bit of that beak color. So it's just cadmium reds and burnt sienna. But yeah, about 8 minutes or so it took me to knock up these colors without overthinking things. As I said, in general, it's just getting the values correct. These will be adjusted slightly. I'm going to be mixing in and lightening up the colors, but it just gives me an idea really of what I want to kind of use really. So starting, I always start with the eyes and the well, you can't really see the eyes here, but the kind of small details here. I just want to knock in that um, kind of dark area by using one of these tiny little brushes. I hate using these brushes. I'd rather get all the fun parts done, but you got to do it sometimes because, as I said, this linen surface is about 18 by 15 inches, and I need some smaller brushes from time to time just to get in some smaller areas, really. You can see the concentration on my face as I knock in this really simple area. That makes an amazing black, by the way. About equal measures of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. They just kind of cancel each other out and just make this really kind of more natural black. And I like to adjust my blacks as well sometimes. So I added in a bit of the quinacridone magenta, but that quinacridone magenta is really punchy, really strong, so you don't need too much. Okay, so another brush, and usually start from dark to light. Um, but in this painting, I kind of went dark to super light and then back to dark and then mid tones. I danced around a little bit. You're going to see a bit of struggle in this painting, in this piece. Um, I overcomplicated it by looking at it too long, I think, and I there's a lot of detail and a lot of things going on, and for a moment or two, I forgot that I'm an impressionist, abstract kind of painter, and it was a difficult one. A few moments were pretty tough, and as I said, I wanted to, or not wanted to, but I thought I would abandon this piece a bit later. So here I'm just adding a little bit more titanium white in there. And the paint is slightly thicker as the highlights get more sort of shown without overblending everything. Now I did blend quite a little bit in this piece because I tend to do that if I'm not kind of happy with where it's going. Um, and it's for me it's quite important to also show your mistakes as well. So some of these, well, I wouldn't say mistakes, but kind of like half attempts um, of a previous kind of idea. Um, so here I'm going to jump into my shadows now, and I did notice that it went a little bit too dark. Um, than what I would have liked, so I've gone a bit lighter there. But the shadows made everything in this piece. It was such a beautiful kind of picture of the swan, like the shadow, the cool. I really wanted to kind of take note about the cool and warmth that this swan um, would show in the actual picture, and it was a really nice kind of color harmony as well. Yeah, duly noted. It was more of a on the cool side this painting, but there are kind of subtle hints of warmth, um, which you're going to see me kind of struggle with later. And it was a bit of a struggle, but I'm so glad I kept going with it, and I'm just playing now with brushstrokes and using healthy amount of paints. Um, but yeah, as I was going to say, if you feel like a painting isn't going to plan, just keep going with it. Treat it like an experiment because it's one painting. It's like an hour and 10 minutes, and you're gonna you're gonna see me kind of like the chaos. It becomes a bit chaotic later, but here I started off quite well, and I was thinking this is going to be nice. And I've got my these are flat brushes. These are cheap ones. I usually use Rosemary and Co. Ivory flats, but I didn't have any small enough for this piece. I've been working smaller recently, but yeah, just wiping the brush a little bit in between. I think I rinsed it there in a bit of odorless mineral spirits and then dried it really well because I don't want it to be too fluidy. And just kind of squinting a little bit at the reference photo and just applying really. Applying what I think, which tones and values I think need to go where really. But it was a very complex study, subject, should I say? Because when you when you have when you have blue on your surface and you put yellow, what color do you get? You get green, and we don't have green the um, in the subject, so I avoided the green part. But you do get a kind of grey area, which you're going to see me add later. So being really kind of, I want these brushstrokes to kind of show. I like these sharp edges in some areas. And just indicating a little bit really. I think those three lines really opened up a whole new kind of problem of what I was going to do because I started seeing detail now, and these brushes are quite nice for kind of fine detail. But yeah, if you're painting and you kind of something isn't going right, just keep going with it. Treat it like an experimental piece. That's where the palette knife should come in and just make a mess and enjoy it and create abstraction. Um, so just indicating some shadowy areas, still with the same mix but slightly lighter. You can see that I didn't pick up quite enough paint there. And Yeah, okay, some areas are good for kind of thinning down shadows, keeping that kind of interest as the interest within your painting by having thin paint, thick paints, and kind of mixing it up a little bit. Um, Here I just picked up that kind of muted, kind of grey color, and just using the same color just to identify the same kind of color and tone that I can see in the reference photo, and I'm squinting a little bit for my values. Okay, a little bit of that liquid up there, just for some, just to make the paint a little bit more kind of fluid. And I'm also kind of stepping back from the painting. I'm fairly close to the painting. I wasn't earlier when I put the black in, but okay, that's the tiny detail. But I'm fairly kind of back away from the painting, and every sort of 7 to 10 minutes, maybe less sometimes, I put my brushes down, I stand back, see what's working, see what isn't, and then get back to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, about an hour and 20 minutes in it took me, and that's not a bad time for a painting that's 18 inches by 15 inches. And keep in mind, there's a lot of transitions in tone in this, in the body of the swan, and there are also things that kind of how I want to portray a piece with palette knives later on, and blending and kind of working over the top of this kind of application, this layer. So there's a lot to think about. Um, when you're working in Alla Prima, you're really kind of in the moment. So there, I'm just knocking in that yellow to make the grey a bit warmer. This is where it gets a bit interesting now, because there was warmth in this grey, and there was also cool in this grey. And I think I did, well, must have cleaned the brush in Odorous Mineral Spirits and then dried it thoroughly. But yeah, when you're painting Alla Prima, and there's a lot to think about, you're very kind of present. And it's not just a case of getting the details and the tones, but it's the way you kind of apply the paint. Some areas need more paint, some areas need less paint, some areas need more blended paint. However you want to do it. Edges. Edges are huge for me, and I'll be breaking up my edges later on. Even the background, you'll see me play around with the background in a bit of a panic later, but it turned out okay. Um, so a lot going on here. There's lots of greys in this part. There's lots of kind of sparkly, warm areas. And even though I'm using terps or odorless mineral spirits to clean the brushes and keep things kind of, yeah, clean, I used about 11 brushes, which is a bit crazy, but I'm learning. I didn't use mineral spirits for a long time, um, but I'm using it in. I'm really careful with it. Lid's closed, and I'm not rinsing um, the paintbrush and paint. Okay, so here I've just changed my brush, and this is what I said earlier about jumping straight into my lights. So as I mentioned, I usually work dark to light, and I start with the darkest and then go to my brightest, and then I might modify it slightly. But here I went straight into my light. I did this because it was about now that I needed to see what was going on in regards to what I'd already put down. So I went straight into my lightest light, um, to try and match if it was okay with what I have already have now. Thick paint, and To be honest, about now, I could have perhaps done with doing the backgrounds, but this worked out okay. It's like problem solving in painting. I love it. And a lot of my paintings I do in Alla Prima, I'm happy, but there are some that I think, oh no, it's not gonna kind of work out. And this was one of them, and I'm so glad that I kept going with it because it's Alla Prima paintings. We're making a mark and we're leaving it. We're enjoying ourselves. We're present. We're seeing what we can do in a little bit of time, and we're kind of relaxed as well, if that makes sense. Well, at least I am, apart from one or two parts. Anyway, stop rambling, Sean. So thick paint, because this is almost my brightest highlight. I'm applying it with thick paint, which is less using less of that liquid and more application of paint with my new brush there. Okay, so as you can see, I'm kind of just filling in um, on the linen there. I'm not blending or anything, just kind of blocking in now, still. Turning my brush around using the paint as much as I can, and then kind of leaving it. A little bit of blend there. Okay, I think that's another brush, same style, but another brush. And I wanted to warm up his bum or the tail part of the swan. Okay, another brush again. This is my cool brush. So back to the cool colors. Not much there, just a bit of softening. And a bit of yellow ochre in that cream mix there. And I went a bit too dark, I think. I think I need some more white. Well, that would be white later. So just a bit of yellow warmth now next to that blue, but not actually on the blue. And just basically mark making, really. And I noticed that this part was kind of like a warm. Okay, this is fairly bright for now, but I fixed that later. No, that part was actually a cool blue, which I liked. I saw in the reference photo and I wanted it to be kind of similar. So you'll see me rub that part out later, what I just did. Um, but yeah, very tricky. Lots of warm, lots of cool tones, lots going on within this small kind of subject. Okay, a bit more liquid original there. And slightly thicker paint. And just putting a mark down, leaving it. Now here's where I kind of erased it. So I've flattened out more and almost erased it, but it's very thin now, that part, so I can paint over the top of that with thicker paint later. So just smoothing out some areas now because there's a lot of work to do. And just picked up a bit of that ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and a touch of yellow ochre. I think that was yellow ochre, and I'm wanting to go for something um, a bit more sort of muted now, but on the warm side. Or did I go to cool side? Yeah, I think that's a warm part there now for a warm kind of shadow. Yeah, just along the line there. So kept it warm for now, just to indicate a bit of a warmth or perhaps reflection from the sea. Okay, I just cleaned that brush now. You didn't see that. I cut that out um, just to save with the time. But yeah, I cleaned that brush really well with turps and then dried it on paper towels. Okay, with that light blue, I just wanted to lighten up that shadow slightly, or most of that shadow. I just wanted a little bit of that punchy kind of blue mixed into the other blue. A bit of blue shadow there. I just cut through that paint there, as you saw, just to indicate a few minor details. A bit more of that light blue, just to lighten it a little bit. Putting a brush down, leaving it, not blending much at the moment. Just now blend a little bit. That brush is clean. Just wiping it there. Just softening out some areas. And this is probably the moment where I thought, okay, I need to blend and soften now, and then I need to kind of rework things. Not rework, but kind of add and adjust it more accordingly. Because I do want the mad combination of blended parts, soft edges, hard edges, medium edges, thick paint, thin paint. I kind of want it all. Um, it sounds complicated, but I also want to kind of simplify it as well. That's why I don't spend too long on paintings. I want to sort of say, get that um, to be spontaneous in my brush strokes. And it's hard sometimes because there's a lot of small details here. It's hard to kind of throw down your paint strokes and then leave it. In some areas you'll see in the backgrounds, I do that a bit more abrupt with my knife in hand, with the palette knife and large brushes. But yeah, when it comes to something like the focal point or the actual major subject, then I slow down a little bit. But I do like using paintbrushes and palette knives, and you're going to see the palette knife come into play shortly. Well, shortly, yeah, I'd say quite shortly, yeah, soon, quite soon. So still taking it a little bit easy, blending and softening some areas out, softening that cool shadow there. Because it looks, I mean, the swan, it's quite hard to explain. It's not like pure bright white yet, and that's going to be coming later with the palette knife. It's kind of like blues and slightly greys as well. And the sun wasn't on um, the actual, you didn't see on the actual neck of um, the swan. And I think the photo is a little bit more contrasty. Okay, so got my old um, dagger brush, quite a large one. This one is. Now I've put it in a little bit of terps or odorless mineral spirits, just a little bit, and then I just for some more flow because um, I want to kind of cover this area as quickly as possible and not play around too much with that light blue color. And gone a little bit lighter there. A bit of liquid, and this is where I get a bit kind of fast and a bit more expressive. So it goes a little bit lighter towards the sea line. Now I'm not super over blending everything. I want a few of those brush strokes to show through a little bit, which you'll see um, shortly now, in a minute. So slightly thicker paint over that already mixed powder, or that blue mix there. So it starts more sort of blue at the top, and I'm adding a little bit of red now into that, and a little bit of white. I wanted a tiny touch of pink in the horizon line, which just warms it up a little bit. And that didn't take long at all. Yeah, a little bit, that's it. I want a little bit blue at the top there. Bit more, yeah, a bit more blue, Sean. Because it was more blue at the top and then it goes sort of white to pink towards the sea. And then just blend a little bit. A few brush strokes there. I don't want to blend everything out. That's boring. There's a lot of fun being more expressive now after being kind of not tight with the swan, but kind of a bit more free here. So that was slightly diluted with the odorless mineral spirits and a touch of liquid. And now the shoreline, which I love this because, okay, I just put a little bit of my brush in a bit of terps there, not too much. Now I love this part because we've got a nice line there, which goes straight across, healthy amount of paints. And taking that dark mix and lighten it up. Now this is where it gets cool because earlier I mentioned about hard and soft edges, and that can also apply to the background too. So I've got a soft edge here, and in the minute on the left, there'd be a slightly hard edge, which I want against that dark distancy. So a little bit thicker paint there, and along that line leaves a nice sharp edge, which I think is really cool. Now add a little bit of green into that blue. A little bit of terps there, not too much, because I wipe the excess off after I dip it into the terps, into the mineral spirits. A little bit more green for some added interest. Just playing also with direction as well. I'm not swooping everything horizontally. A few vertical lines as well. But it's fairly thin, the paint as well, and not so diluted, but I'm kind of scrubbing it in quite a lot in the surface. Bit more liquid and a bit more. You can see my face there. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I've just completely cocked this up. No, it's okay. This is where, I'm just like, I mean, they're Alla Prima paintings. I mean, experimental sometimes depends, but it's art. We're not copying. Well, I'm not copying photographs to be exact. I'm playing and having fun with it. I'm focused. I'm present. Um, and I'm just having fun, really. Yeah. And I really enjoy talking and teaching and showing you um, methods, really. And still with that same green. And I'm going to be adding a little bit more paint over the top of um, some of this sea. And it'd be soon time to change, yeah, change sides. So same brush still. Do a lot of things. It's very versatile, these dagger brushes. As I said, mainly use the flats from Rosemary and Co., the ivory flats. But these daggers are pretty cool as well if you want to cover large areas and do this sort of thing, like turn it on its edge. Not worry too much about getting everything exact when it comes to painting around a swan. I'm going for this, like, again, mad mix of abstraction, impressionism, hints of realism, showing brushstrokes, not showing brushstrokes, choosing where I want to show brushstrokes, where I don't want to show brushstrokes really. But I certainly don't want to spend 3 hours on this painting. I, I just want to say what I can without rushing it in a short amount of time, really, when I feel like it's done. Bit of green there, and yeah, a bit of that brown mix that I had. So that was a reflection that I used earlier from the sea into or onto the swan. So this is a lot of fun. This was fun, being really expressive and putting your mark down and kind of leaving some areas, not leaving some areas. So I did rinse the brush a little bit, and yeah, I wanted some of that vibrancy now. Of that blue, that Greek sea is absolutely beautiful. I hope I did it justice with these colours because these tones, because the sea in Skiathos is just absolutely incredible. I mean, the sea in any Greek island is beautiful. Now here, which I really liked, just cutting through that paint to reveal some turquoise areas. Very simple. With the same brush, same dagger brush, just indicating some areas of turquoise blue. You can say so much by creating the illusion of detail. Um, Bold brush strokes. I mean, this is the biggest brush I use. I think it's the biggest brush that I own as well. But you can say so much um, with large brushes and brush strokes. And it's quite funny because I took a photograph of this painting afterwards and it looked really realistic. Like, I was like, oh my god, it's really realistic. And then you get up close and it's just, you zoom in, it's just like random kind of mushy paint, which doesn't make sense, abstraction. That's exactly what I want to go for. I don't want anyone to zoom into my work and see all the tiny little details. I think that's really not for me. I want the impression of something. I want distortion. Um, yeah, small hints of detail. Like you can see the black part of the swan and the great the kind of tonal scale of that brown reds into the beak and then the bright highlight. Just put a bit more white down there. So keeping that brush fairly clean, I've gone for yellow there. I'm not sure why. Cadmium yellow pale and titanium white. Ah, yeah, you can see we're on the shoreline here. The swan was really close to us, so I was literally stood about a meter and a half away. So I'm actually standing on the sand here, but this sand is underneath the sea, so it's a really shallow shoreline here. This is when it came to life for me now after creating these marks, these expressive marks. This is when I thought, okay, I'm going to save this picture. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to persevere. And it happens. It happens to everyone, every artist, oil painter. It happens. Um, but a lot of them I've heard will just throw the painting away or just paint over it. I've done it before. I painted over paintings. Not many. but I've done it. So thick white there. It's a lot of fun with this Alla Prima technique. Oh, I'm just cleaning up the liquid original. I just put some more down. Now here's time to tidy up a little bit. The beak, the C behind the beak. So without getting too kind of technical and fussy about around the edges of the swan, I wanted to tidy up some areas. Oh, went a bit too vibrant there, as you can see. So I think a bit more white in that bright blue mix, or white in general. I also do quite a lot of mixing on the actual surface. Like for example, there I just picked up that. Actually, it's like a contaminated yellow white now on the top left hand side. So yeah, I could pick up paint and just kind of blend it within on the actual surface, which is quite fun as well. So just indicating some, I guess, highlights or blending some areas. Playing with direction as well. As I said, I don't want everything to be kind of the same direction. Because we've got the shoreline here, I brought a lot of that paint kind of in this direction. Blending a little bit. Keeping some areas visible. Get that really kind of interesting depth when you can, when you don't blend, when you blend some areas and some areas not. You can see that nice thick chunky paint of almost white on the shoreline. I think I left most of that. And just making it a little bit more natural now behind the swan, picking up the same colours, and then just kind of leaving it a little bit of pressure there, not so much pressure. It's literally about pressure and how much you push down, really. Blend a little bit, soften areas, pull some areas down. A touch of green in the background. Have a little bit of area blended. Oh, I did blend a little bit out actually of that, but I'll be working my palette knife over the top of this shortly. Okay, a bit of liquid in. Okay, so palette knife on the edge. Comes the fun part. Bit of abstraction and texture. So there's a little bit of liquid in that mix. And just placing really, excuse my shoulder there, but sometimes I have to stand on the left hand side. It's only just to put in some area of abstraction. Same thing I just did, but stand on that side. I think I did that about 2 or 3 more times, ever so quickly. But okay, edge of the palette knife just to indicate some highlights and some kind of ripples. Because we've got movement here. I want to create a bit of movement. So to create movement and more interest, depth, distortion, I like to use palette knives and paintbrushes. And I'll certainly be fixing the swan shortly as well. That's a lot of fun. This linen is really durable. I mean, I've put this poor linen surface in I put it through a lot of this painting. Really rigorous, kind of pushing, pulling, scratching. You'll see me scratching later. But it's very strong. I've never ripped linen. Um, I hear I'm just mixed up a more green now, so um, more green in the shadow part of the sea. Because that's the colour, bluey green. And it's a lot of fun now. This is where you don't overthink anything. You just throw down the paint, you swipe it, you blend it wherever you think, and abstract C. I just absolutely adore this. Like, this truly is painting and expressing yourself and creating, being authentic, creating what you want to create. I just absolutely love this, and there is a lot of ways you can work with a palette knife. I encourage you to try the palette knife, even if you want to don't go if you even if you don't want to go as mad as I do. Just try it with some thick areas. Um, Paintbrushes are great, obviously, but if you want some really chunky paint, use a palette knife, and then you can use a blush. You can use a brush to kind of blend areas out. For example, there's a lot of chunky. Yeah, that's why I blended it out. I love that texture because it kind of blends a little bit with what we've already got down, depending on how thick you put the paint down with the palette knife. Okay, a bit of that blue just to cut through what I've already got there. Oh, the light blue, should I say. Scratching in some lines. I absolutely love doing that. You see me ripping into that paint and the linen survived. Wiping the palette knife as well. I think that's more white paint. There's a lot of white paint in this. Okay, we have a swan that's technically white, but not white. So, I need to fix the swan. Struggled a little bit here. A little bit of fighting. Liquid original and titanium white. I think I added a touch of that cadmium yellow, but I'll be mixing a little bit of what's already down on the paint on the actual swan. So an old filbert brush here, and this isn't my final highlight because, well, it is in some areas, but it's kind of, it's not white, it's kind of off-white on the warm side, almost like a creamy yellow color. But I'll be emphasizing these strong highlights later. So I'm literally with the palette knife. So I'm literally just scooping up the paint there and then kind of leaving it. And then softening and indicating some areas with the paint that's already down. And again, the filbert is good for picking up chunky paint. It's not as good as the palette knife, but it's still very effective. But it's still not my brightest bright, or my brightest highlight. It's because it's mixing quite a bit with what I already have down. But that's fine. I'm working up to my brightest highlight. That was the plan anyway. Yeah, I'm loading up the paint every couple strokes because I want it to be very dominant now, the paint. I don't want to kind of mush it in too much. And it's good to have your highlights with really thick paint, like your strongest highlights. It's like light bounces and it will reveal them more than if you just had kind of thin white paint. I like to use thin white paint in some areas, but for the strongest part, it's best to keep it really thick. A little bit of medium, but just, yeah, thicker application. So I accidentally put a bit of red in that white there, which was a great idea. Not really. So a little bit of fine detail now, which I'm not really a fan of. Small, fine detail bits. I kind of try to stay away with that. Okay, so I left that. I did that and left it. Just kind of softening up some areas now in the sea, and that brush is clean. Was clean. Okay, so what am I doing here? Touch of ever such a small touch. I don't usually like using bright white, even when I mix on the surface, but now I'm coming around a little bit now. I wanted to identify a little bit of brightness, which I saw up by his chin underneath the beak. It didn't work so well, so I didn't do it. I just wanted to. I dance around a lot. I kind of can't stay in one place. I think that makes things a bit more interesting because it kind of unites things, in my opinion. So I won't just work in one corner of the bud and then finish at the next. I just want to kind of say what I need to say. Just softening out some areas now. But yeah, I kind of like to work it as a whole. Any subject, that is. Okay, I got my stick back out. Feeling a bit impulsive now as well. Just bringing a bit of that blue, kind of keeping it muted still. That's the beauty of oil paints, where it blends and things can stay muted. Getting serious now. Just softening, getting rid of a bit of that texture within the bird. Because I want both. I want texture and I want blended areas. Cleaning the brush. Okay, a bit more liquid. Mm. Yeah, I wanted to keep that and then leave it, but I ended up blending it a little bit. I think I created a softer edge there, which is fine. And cool brush now, just indicate a little bit of that blue into the yellow, and I didn't make green, which is great. Just blended a bit of that top part of the highlight in. Yeah, trying to get brushstrokes to show and other blended areas, but now excuse my shoulder, but I'll tell you what I did here, if I remember. I'm thickening up the left part of the neck with the palette knife. All will be revealed. Apologies for that. Yeah, not much change. Yeah, you can see underneath this chin, I wanted that sort of highlight. And here, now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to place on the paint with the palette knife. And now we get that really chunky, thick kind of light that's glowing. And that's not, remember, that's not pure titanium white. That's titanium white with a tiny little bit of cadmium yellow pale. And just cutting in for some thick impasto interest. And again, it got a little bit fiddly. I blame the size of this. If it was bigger, I could have gone a bit, but you can see that you get this really nice kind of harsh edge when using the palette knife. That's what I said earlier, and that's what I'm going to say in every single painting tutorial. Edges are key. Soft edges, hard edges, medium edges. Get a variety of edges. And I haven't finished yet. I'll still be adding some more edge work in shortly. And also with the background as well, in the sea. So just picking up a bit of warm highlight there, just to cut through what I already have down. You can have so much fun. Like I could have spent an hour on the sea alone, but I didn't want to. I want to try and say something and leave it, but it's so much fun. Try and get that spontaneous look. Um, Apologies. I think I picked up some blue. If I did, I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing right now. No, that's white or off-white. I think I'm just cutting through the neck. Yeah, you can now see a couple of lines through the swan's neck. And I'm getting serious again now with my small, tiny little brush. I just wanted to soften and blend that shadow out slightly whilst holding my breath. Yeah, why so serious? Just tying in some areas together with a small brush. Bit of yellow now. I absolutely love working Alla Prima. I absolutely adore it. Saying what you got to say in the time that you have, having the impression of something. This is the last time I think my shoulder gets in the way. But I'll tell you exactly what I did. What did I do? Oh, underneath his chin a little bit more white in the neck. I'm still going with that palette knife, just adding in a little bit of texture, but get this amazing texture um, and scratchiness, and it's just absolutely amazing. Just such a beautiful way to paint with using tools. Don't ever be restricted just to using paintbrushes. I mean, you can if you want, but use cards, callus wedges, palette knives, rollers, sponges, have fun with it. So pick up a bit of that blue there. And picking up, making it a little bit more kind of on the yellow side here. Trying to indicate a reflection of his head. I think I worked on this a few times there. Just want to, the aim was just to put it down and leave it, the reflection. But I couldn't resist and playing a little bit more. Bit more of that liquid on the palette knife with that yellowy white kind of highlight. Just dragging a little bit down as well. Bit more blend. Keeping that palette knife. Every time the palette knife moves away from the screen, it's just cleaning it up a little bit. Now I just want to indicate his foot. underneath the water. And just darken one or two areas. I want this to be really, yeah, not so contrasty. I want it to be more kind of tranquil and kind of soothing in a cool way. Just knocking back that foot a little bit with the ripple. Wiping the palette knife. Now lightening that mix, that darkest mix, to almost grey. Just picked up a bit of that titanium white there. A touch more yellow. A few scratchy marks to indicate some more texture. There's a lot going on in the in the Swan. A lot of yeah, details, and yeah, it can be quite tough when you see a detailed subjects and you want to kind of capture it in an impressionistic way, and but tough meaning like you've got options, you got more options than just copying a picture that has to be kind of realistic. You've got a lot more options to make it your own. Okay, just playing a little bit here, and I'm going to be adding some of that kind of abstraction over the top of some areas in the sea, just kind of unite the sea together a little bit, shortly. Okay, so this is the last time that I'm in the way. Yeah, can you see that? I just got that color mix and I just put it across about halfway up the top of his neck on the left, and I just blended that in just to kind of, yeah, unite that, get that abstraction as we see in the foreground, but just a little bit. And I'm going to be doing it again, but you're going to see it this time. If not this time, the next time. Yeah, this time. There you go. So look at that. So that kind of blends a little bit with a little tiny bit of that abstraction. Let's get a bigger palette knife. There's a lot of fun now. We have a nice sharp edge now along the left hand side on the ducks, on the swan's um, neck. But this is where it gets really fun now. I mean, I could have gone further and distorted it more, but felt like I didn't need to. You can't get that with a brush. Absolutely amazing. Using paintbrushes and palette knives. It's just a dream. Look at that. And a little bit of distortion's fine. And just pushing now because I wanted to blend it a little bit. Didn't want too much going on in the behind the the swan. And I'm gonna find some edges now, I think. Bit of softening out there. And just a little bit of blend there. And just now it just being kind of creating movement now with the palette knife, distorting things. bit more chunky palette knife paint. Just take that lump off there a little bit, blend it slightly. There's a bit too textured for me there. Just smoothing out some edges there. There's an edge there on the left there, and just a little bit on the right. But I love that hard edge that we see on the left-hand side. Just a few kind of last-minute details, getting that thick edge there of paint, holding my breath and then leaving it, and then we have texture within the bird. Just blend a little bit, wipe the palette knife. And getting serious again, just softening out and lightening that shadow so it runs nicely along the back of the swan. And just softening some areas out. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Hope you learned something, and just want to say thank you ever so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial. Take care for now and happy painting.